There is a question that most people never truly ask themselves, not in any serious way. They might glance at it. They might brush past it in moments of crisis or celebration. But they don't sit with it. They don't let it reshape the architecture of their daily existence. The question is this: who are you becoming? Not, who are you? That question traps people. It suggests a fixed state, a finished product, a museum piece behind glass. But you are not behind glass. You are in motion. You are under construction. You are, right now, in this very moment, being built by every decision you make, every thought you allow to loop in your mind, every action you take or avoid. This is not motivational hyperbole. This is biological, neurological, psychological reality. And for the next hour and 25 minutes, we are going to examine that reality with the precision of a scientist and the reverence of an artist. We are going to understand the mechanisms of transformation, not because transformation is easy, but because it is possible. And possibility is the only territory worth inhabiting. Let me be direct about what this is and what this is not. This is not a collection of feel-good affirmations designed to give you a temporary dopamine hit before you return to your previous patterns. This is not a lecture telling you to just think positive or manifest your dreams without any structural understanding of how change actually occurs in human beings. What this is, a systematic exploration of the science and art of human potential. We will draw from neuroscience, from behavioral psychology, from the documented experiences of individuals who have undergone genuine transformation, and from philosophical traditions that have wrestled with the question of human excellence for thousands of years. I want you to approach the next 85 minutes as an active participant, not a passive consumer. Research on learning and retention shows that engagement, mental, emotional, even physical, dramatically increases what you integrate and what you actually apply. So I will be posing questions throughout. I will be asking you to pause and reflect. I will be asking you to imagine, to remember, to project forward. If you're driving, keep your eyes on the road, but let your mind wander into these territories. If you're walking, let your pace match the rhythm of your thoughts. If you're sitting, sit with intention. This is not background noise. This is foreground work. Here's how we move through this material. First, we'll examine the biology of belief, how your brain literally reshapes itself based on what you repeatedly think, and why understanding neuroplasticity changes everything about what's possible for you. Second, we'll explore the pattern interrupt, the mechanics of breaking cycles of behavior that no longer serve you, and why willpower alone is insufficient for lasting change. Third, we'll dive into the compound interest of character, how small, seemingly insignificant daily actions accumulate into massive transformation over time, and why most people quit before the compound effect kicks in. Fourth, we'll face the mirror of adversity, how to use difficulty as data, how to reframe failure as feedback, and why your relationship with struggle determines the upper limits of your growth. Fifth, we'll construct the architecture of daily ritual, the specific, practical structures that support transformation when motivation inevitably fades. And finally, we'll arrive at the legacy mindset, how thinking beyond your own lifespan changes every decision you make today. By the end, you won't have a to-do list. You'll have a transformed understanding of what's possible. And that understanding, properly integrated, will generate its own actions. So, let's begin. In the late 1960s, a neuroscientist named Michael Masnick conducted experiments that would eventually overturn a fundamental assumption about the human brain. The assumption was this, that by adulthood, the brain is fixed. The neural pathways are set. You have what you have, and change is limited to the margins. Masnick's research, and the decades of research that followed, proved this assumption catastrophically wrong. The brain is not fixed. It is plastic, capable of reorganizing itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. This is neuroplasticity, and it is the biological foundation of every transformation story you've ever heard. But here's what most people miss: neuroplasticity is value neutral. Your brain doesn't distinguish between habits that serve you and habits that harm you. It simply responds to repetition. Every time you repeat a thought, a behavior, an emotional response, you are strengthening a neural pathway. You are making that pathway more efficient, more automatic, more likely to fire in the future. This means that your current patterns, your automatic reactions, your default interpretations, your habitual behaviors, are not character flaws. They are biological realities. They are well-trodden paths in your neural landscape. And understanding this is crucial because it shifts the conversation from shame to engineering. You are not broken. You are simply running efficient programs that may no longer serve your stated goals. Let's talk about the voice in your head. Not in any mystical sense, in the literal, neurological sense. You have an internal monologue. For most people, it runs constantly, a background commentary on experience. And the content of that monologue matters enormously, because it is literally shaping your brain. When you repeatedly tell yourself a story, "I'm not good with numbers, I always quit when things get hard, people like me don't succeed," you are not just being pessimistic. You are conducting neural training. You are strengthening the pathways associated with that identity. And because the brain's primary drive is energy conservation, it will automatically filter your perception to confirm that identity. This is confirmation bias operating at the neural level. But the reverse is also true. When you deliberately introduce new narratives, evidence-based, possibility-oriented narratives, you begin forging new pathways. At first, these pathways are weak. They are like hiking trails through dense forest. The old highways are still there, still easy to travel. But with repetition, the new pathways strengthen. They become roads. Eventually, they become highways themselves. This is not fake it till you make it. This is not pretending. This is the deliberate, systematic construction of new neural architecture through sustained attention and repetition. Let me share a specific study that illustrates this principle. In the 1960s, researchers at UC Berkeley conducted experiments with rats in different environments. Some rats were placed in standard cages, food, water, shelter, but nothing else. Other rats were placed in enriched environments, cages with toys, tunnels, other rats to interact with, objects to manipulate and explore. The results were dramatic. The rats in enriched environments developed significantly thicker cerebral cortices. They had more synaptic connections. They performed better on maze tests. Their brains were literally more complex, more capable, more plastic. Now, here's the crucial part: you are not a rat in a cage. But you are an organism with a brain that responds to environmental complexity. And your environment includes not just your physical space, but your informational diet, your social connections, your daily challenges, your exposure to novelty. The question becomes, what kind of environment are you creating for your brain? Is it enriched or impoverished? Are you exposing yourself to complexity, to challenge, to perspectives that stretch your existing frameworks? Or are you repeating the same informational loops, the same conversations, the same media consumption, day after day? Your brain will become what it repeatedly encounters. This is not metaphor. This is biology. Contemporary neuroscience, particularly the work of researchers like Lisa Feldman Barrett, has revealed another crucial insight: your brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It does not passively receive sensory input and then react. It constantly generates predictions about what will happen next, and then uses sensory input to confirm or correct those predictions. This has profound implications for belief. Your beliefs are not abstract philosophical positions. They are active predictions that shape your perception. If you believe that social situations are threatening, your brain will predict threat, will scan for threat, will interpret ambiguous social cues as threatening. The belief generates the experience that confirms the belief. But again, this mechanism is value neutral. You can leverage it. You can deliberately cultivate beliefs, evidence-based, tested, but fundamentally possibility-oriented beliefs that generate different predictions. You can train your brain to predict growth, to predict opportunity, to predict that challenges are surmountable. This doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means recognizing that reality, as you experience it, is already filtered through prediction. You are never experiencing raw reality. You are experiencing your brain's best guess. And you can influence that guessing process through deliberate belief construction. Before we move to the next chapter, I want you to pause and consider, what are the core beliefs that have been running in your background operating system? Not the beliefs you claim to hold, the ones you actually operate from. The ones that predict your daily experience. Write them down if you can. Or simply hold them in your awareness. Because in the next chapter, we're going to discuss how to interrupt the patterns these beliefs generate. And you can't interrupt what you can't see. There is a pervasive myth in self-improvement culture that transformation is primarily a matter of willpower. That if you just try hard enough, if you just want it badly enough, if you just grit your teeth and push through, you can override any pattern. The research on willpower suggests something more nuanced and, frankly, more hopeful. Willpower is a real phenomenon, but it is limited. It depletes with use. It is subject to ego depletion, decision fatigue, and environmental triggers. Relying on willpower for transformation is like relying on a small emergency generator to power an entire city. It will work for brief periods, but it will fail under sustained load. This is why so many well-intentioned transformations fail. People summon enormous willpower for a short burst, New Year's resolutions, the start of a new project, a moment of inspiration, and then, when willpower inevitably depletes, they revert to baseline. Not because they are weak, but because they are human. Because they are fighting biology with a tool that biology didn't design for sustained combat. The alternative is not more willpower. It's smarter architecture. It's understanding that transformation requires interrupting patterns at their source, not fighting them at the surface. To understand pattern interruption, we need to understand how habits work. Charles Duhigg's research, building on foundational work in behavioral psychology, identifies the habit loop, cue, routine, reward. The cue is a trigger, environmental, emotional, temporal, that initiates the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward is the payoff, the neurological yes that reinforces the loop. Most failed attempts at change focus exclusively on the routine. I will stop eating sugar. I will start exercising. I will check my phone less. But the routine is the middle of the chain. The real leverage points are the cue and the reward. Pattern interruption means identifying your cues with precision. What specifically triggers the behavior you want to change? Is it a time of day? An emotional state? A particular environment? A preceding action? When you map the cue with specificity, you create an intervention point. And it means understanding the reward with honesty. What need is the current behavior meeting? Is it stress relief? Social connection? Dopamine stimulation? Boredom alleviation? If you don't address the underlying need, if you don't find an alternative way to deliver the reward, the pattern will reassert itself. It must. The need is real. Psychologist Peter Gowitzer's research on implementation intentions offers a powerful tool for pattern interruption. The basic formula is simple: if situation X, then I will behavior Y. This is not vague goal setting. This is pre-commitment. This is creating a neural pathway in advance for how you will respond to a specific trigger. If I feel the urge to check my phone during deep work, then I will take 3 breaths and return to my task. If I arrive home from work stressed, then I will change clothes and go for a 10-minute walk before doing anything else. The power of implementation intentions lies in their specificity and their predecision. They remove the moment of choice, which is where willpower is taxed and patterns reassert. The decision has already been made. The pattern has been pre-interrupted. Research shows that people who use implementation intentions are significantly more likely to follow through on their goals than those who rely on motivation or general intentions. They are architecting their responses rather than hoping for the best. The most powerful pattern interrupts happen not in the moment of choice, but long before. They happen in the design of your environment. If you want to eat healthier, the most effective intervention is not to strengthen your willpower against cookies. It's to not have cookies in your house. It's to have vegetables pre-cut and visible. It's to change the architecture of your kitchen so that the default option supports your goal. If you want to use your phone less, the most effective intervention is not to try harder. It's to remove apps, to turn your phone grayscale, to charge it in another room, to create physical distance between you and the queue. This is behavioral economics applied to personal transformation. It's recognizing that you are a product of your environment, and that designing that environment is one of your highest leverage activities. The question is not how can I be stronger? The question is how can I make this easier? How can you reduce friction for behaviors you want and increase friction for behaviors you don't? The deepest pattern interruption happens at the level of identity. Not I'm trying to quit smoking but I'm not a smoker. Not I'm working on being more organized but I'm an organized person. When you shift identity, you change the entire framework of decision making. You no longer ask should I do this behavior. You ask what would a person like me do? The behavior becomes self-reinforcing because it confirms the identity. This is not about faking an identity you don't believe. It's about recognizing that identity is not discovered, it's constructed. It's the story you tell yourself about yourself. And you can edit that story. You can behave your way into a new identity through small, consistent action that accumulate into evidence. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Pattern interruption at the identity level means asking, what actions would the person I want to be take today? And then taking them, not because you feel like it, but because that is who you are becoming. There is a mathematical concept that, when applied to human development, becomes profoundly motivating. It is the concept of compound interest. In finance, compound interest means that your interest earns interest. Your growth generates more growth. Over time, this creates exponential curves rather than linear progress. The same principle applies to skills, to habits, to character. In the beginning, progress is invisible. You put in effort, and nothing seems to change. This is the valley of disappointment, the gap between effort and visible result. It is where most people quit. They conclude that the effort isn't working, that they are not making progress, that this path is not for them. But beneath the surface, compound interest is accumulating. Neural pathways are strengthening. Capabilities are building. The foundation is being laid for exponential growth. And then, often suddenly, visible progress accelerates. What seemed impossible becomes possible. What seemed difficult becomes automatic. The problem is that human psychology is not designed for delayed gratification on this scale. We are designed for immediate feedback. We want to see results now. And when we don't, we conclude that our efforts are futile. Understanding compound interest means trusting the process when evidence is absent. It means continuing to invest when the return is not yet visible. It means recognizing that the valley of disappointment is not evidence of failure, it is the necessary precondition for exponential growth. Let's make this concrete. If you improve by just 1% each day, you don't improve by 365% in a year. You improve by 3,778%. You become 37 times better. This is the mathematics of compound growth. Conversely, if you decline by 1% each day, you don't just stagnate. You decay toward zero. You become a fraction of your former capability. The 1% principle means that small actions matter enormously. The extra rep, the additional page. The moment of patience when you would normally react. The decision to show up when you don't feel like it. These are not trivial. They are the deposits in your compound interest account. But, and this is crucial, they must be consistent. Compound interest requires time. It requires the uninterrupted accumulation of small gains. This is why streaks matter. This is why daily practice outperforms sporadic intensity. This is why the tortoise beats the hare not despite being slower, but because being slower allows for consistency. The question is not what can I do today that will transform my life. That question leads to unsustainable intensity. The question is what can I do today that I can do every day. That question leads to compound interest. There is a phenomenon in skill acquisition called the plateau. You make rapid initial progress, and then you seem to stall. You put in the same effort, but you stop improving. This is deeply frustrating, and it leads many people to quit. But the plateau is often an illusion. What's actually happening is that your improvement has shifted from the visible to the invisible. You're developing deeper structures, better technique, better understanding, better integration, that don't immediately translate to better performance. But when they do, when the plateau breaks, the improvement is often dramatic. The plateau is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you are building the foundation for the next level. It is the compound interest accumulating beneath the surface. Research on expertise shows that the path to mastery is not linear. It is a series of progressions followed by plateaus, followed by breakthroughs. The people who become masters are not necessarily the most talented. They are the ones who continue through the plateaus when others quit. If you're in a plateau right now, in your career, your relationships, your skills, your fitness, understand that this is part of the process. Your consistency is not wasted. It is being stored. And when the breakthrough comes, it will seem sudden to others, but it will be the inevitable result of compound interest. Let's expand this beyond skills to character. Who you are, your integrity, your resilience, your capacity for empathy, your ability to delay gratification, is also subject to compound interest. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your self-trust. Every time you choose the difficult right over the easy wrong, you build integrity. Every time you sit with discomfort rather than numbing it, you develop resilience. These are not abstract virtues. They are neural and behavioral patterns that compound over time. And the reverse is also true. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you erode self-trust. Every time you choose convenience over principle, you weaken integrity. Every time you avoid discomfort through distraction, you atrophy resilience. This is why small choices matter enormously. They are not isolated events. They are votes in a larger election about who you are becoming. They are deposits or withdrawals from your character account. The compound interest of character means that you cannot cheat the process. You cannot fake your way to genuine transformation. You must pay the price in daily consistency, in small choices made well, in the accumulation of evidence that you are who you claim to be. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. This is a fundamental miscalibration of the timeline of transformation. Real, lasting change that rewires identity, that alters trajectory, that creates a new baseline, takes time measured in years, not weeks. Not because transformation is slow, but because it is deep. Because it requires the accumulation of compound interest at multiple levels: neural, behavioral, social, environmental. If you are 6 months into a transformation and feeling discouraged because you're not where you want to be, consider 6 months is the very beginning. It is the first deposit in a long-term investment. The real returns are still ahead. This is not meant to discourage. It is meant to calibrate. To free you from the tyranny of unrealistic timelines that make you feel like a failure when you're actually on track. The question is not am I there yet? The question is am I moving in the right direction, consistently? If the answer is yes, you are compounding. The results will come. There is a relationship with adversity that distinguishes those who continue growing from those who stagnate. It is not the absence of adversity. Everyone faces difficulty. It is the interpretation of adversity, the story told about what difficulty means. In fixed mindset, as described by Carol Dweck's research, difficulty is interpreted as evidence of limitation. This is hard, therefore I am not capable of it. In growth mindset, difficulty is interpreted as information. This is hard, therefore I am being challenged, therefore I am growing. This is not positive thinking. This is accurate thinking. Difficulty is correlated with growth. The things that come easily do not develop us. It is the struggle that forges new capabilities, new understandings, new resilience. But the interpretation does not happen automatically. It is a choice, often an unconscious one. The work is to make it conscious. To notice when you are interpreting difficulty as defeat, and to deliberately reframe it as data. What is this difficulty teaching me? What capability is it asking me to develop? What would I need to believe about myself to engage with this challenge effectively? Psychologists have identified a phenomenon called post-traumatic growth. It is the opposite of post-traumatic stress disorder. It is the experience of emerging from adversity not diminished, but expanded. With greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, new possibilities, enhanced personal strength, spiritual development. This is not to minimize trauma or suggest that suffering is inherently good. Suffering is suffering. But the research shows that adversity is not destiny. The same events that break some people become the foundation of transformation for others. The difference lies not in the adversity itself, but in the response. In the meaning made from the experience. In the social support available. In the resources brought to bear. In the narrative constructed about what the adversity means. You cannot always control what happens to you. But you can participate in the construction of meaning. You can ask, given that this has happened, who do I want to be in response? What can I create from this? How can I use this as material for growth? This is not about denying pain. It is about refusing to let pain have the final word. It is about being the author of your story, even when you did not choose the chapter. Artists understand the creative power of constraint. The sonnet form, with its strict rules, has produced some of the most moving poetry in the English language. The budget limitations of early cinema forced innovations in storytelling that unlimited resources might have obscured. In your life, constraints, limitations of time, resources, capability, circumstance, can function similarly. They force creativity. They demand efficiency. They clarify priorities. They prevent the paralysis of infinite possibility. The adversity you face is a constraint. It limits what is possible in one direction, but it opens possibility in another. It forces you to develop capabilities you might not have otherwise needed. It reveals resources you did not know you had. This is not to romanticize struggle. But it is to recognize that struggle has function. That difficulty develops. That the mirror of adversity reflects not just your limitations, but your potential that might have remained dormant in easier circumstances. Resilience is not a trait that some people have and others lack. It is a set of skills that can be developed. It is the capacity to adapt to adversity, to recover from setbacks, to continue functioning in the face of difficulty. Research identifies several components of resilience: the ability to regulate emotion, the capacity to see the bigger picture, the skill of reaching out for support, the practice of maintaining physical health, the discipline of taking action even when motivation is low. Each of these is trainable. Each responds to practice. Each compounds over time. You are not stuck with your current level of resilience. You can build it deliberately through exposure to challenge and the development of coping strategies. The key is to start before you need it. To build resilience in small ways, through physical challenge, through emotional risk, through intellectual difficulty, so that when larger adversities arrive, you have the capacity to meet them. Adversity is inevitable. Resilience is optional, but it is available to anyone willing to do the work. Motivation is unreliable. It fluctuates with energy, with mood, with circumstance. If your transformation strategy depends on feeling motivated, it will fail. Not because you are weak, but because motivation is not designed to sustain long-term behavioral change. What sustains change is architecture, structure, ritual. The design of your environment and your schedule so that the desired behavior becomes the path of least resistance. Rituals are behaviors that have been automated through repetition. They do not require decision. They do not consume willpower. They happen because they are the default, because the cue triggers the routine without conscious deliberation. The morning routine is the most commonly discussed, but rituals can be designed for any part of the day. The key is to identify the behaviors that matter most for your goals, and to embed them in structures that make them automatic. Some habits have disproportionate impact. Charles Duhigg calls these keystone habits. They are habits that, when changed, create ripple effects throughout your life. Exercise is a classic keystone habit. People who establish regular exercise often find that they also improve their diet, their sleep, their productivity, even their financial habits. The exercise doesn't directly cause these changes, but it creates a sense of self-efficacy, a structure for the day, a physiological foundation that makes other changes easier. For you, the keystone habit might be different. It might be meditation. It might be writing morning pages. It might be preparing your meals in advance. It might be a specific evening routine that ensures quality sleep. The task is to identify your keystone habit, the one change that makes other changes easier, and to focus your initial energy there. Not trying to change everything at once, but establishing one architectural element that supports everything else. One ritual that pays enormous dividends is the evening review. Before sleep, take 10 minutes to reflect on the day. What went well? What could have been better? What did you learn? What will you do differently tomorrow? This serves multiple functions. It consolidates learning, strengthening the neural pathways of the day's experiences. It creates closure, allowing your mind to release the day rather than ruminating through the night. It sets intention for tomorrow, creating a bridge that makes the morning more purposeful. The evening review transforms sleep from mere rest into active consolidation. It turns each day into a completed unit of experience, with lessons extracted and applied. Over time, this ritual accelerates learning and prevents the repetition of mistakes. Even in the architecture of productivity, rest is not optional. It is structural. The concept of the Sabbath, a regular period of cessation from work, is found across cultures and traditions because it reflects a fundamental human need. Rest is not the absence of productivity. It is a different kind of productivity. It is the restoration of energy, the integration of experience, the maintenance of the machine. Without it, the compound interest of your efforts is diminished by burnout, by error, by the degradation of capability. Build rest into your architecture. Not as an afterthought, not as a reward for exhaustion, but as a structural element as important as any work period. Protect it with the same discipline you apply to your most important tasks. Most people make decisions based on a time horizon of days or weeks. They optimize for immediate comfort, immediate gratification, immediate relief. This is not a moral failing, it is a cognitive bias. We are wired for present bias, for the discounting of future rewards. But you can expand your time horizon. You can learn to make decisions based on months, years, decades. You can even learn to make decisions based on a time horizon that extends beyond your own life. The legacy mindset is the practice of asking, what will matter in 10 years? What will matter when I am gone? What do I want to have built, contributed, created that will outlast me? This is not morbid. It is clarifying. It cuts through the noise of daily urgency to reveal what is actually important. It aligns daily actions with ultimate values. It transforms trivial decisions into meaningful ones by connecting them to a larger story. The Iroquois Confederacy had a principle that every decision should be made with consideration for its impact 7 generations hence. This is approximately 150 years. Imagine making decisions today based on their impact in 2176. This seems impossibly abstract, but it has practical application. When you consider the long arc of your influence, you are more likely to invest in education, in infrastructure, in relationships, in environmental stewardship. You are less likely to sacrifice the future for the present, to extract value rather than create it. The legacy mindset does not require you to predict the future. It requires you to consider it, to weight it in your calculations, to recognize that you are a link in a chain that extends backward and forward in time, and that your actions have consequences that ripple outward in ways you cannot fully foresee. A fundamental shift happens when you move from a consumption mindset to a contribution mindset. From what can I get? To what can I give? From how can I be entertained? To how can I be useful? This is not about self-sacrifice or martyrdom. It is about recognizing that contribution is the path to genuine fulfillment. That creating value for others is the most reliable way to create value for yourself. That the person who solves problems, who alleviates suffering, who creates beauty, who builds capability in others, that person is never without purpose or opportunity. The legacy mindset asks, what problems can I solve? What suffering can I alleviate? What beauty can I create? What can I build that will continue to serve after I am gone? These are not questions you answer once. They are questions you live into. They orient your development, your career, your relationships toward contribution. And in doing so, they provide a North Star that remains constant even as circumstances change. Awareness of death, when properly integrated, becomes a powerful motivator. Not through fear, but through clarity. The recognition that time is limited, that you have a finite number of days, a finite number of choices, concentrates the mind wonderfully. Steve Jobs, in his famous Stanford commencement address, said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." This is the mortality motivation. The use of death as a filter for importance. The recognition that you are going to die, that you do not know when, and that therefore the only rational response is to live with urgency and intention. Not urgency as anxiety. Urgency as aliveness. As the recognition that this moment, this choice, this day matters because it is part of a finite sequence that constitutes your life. Let's synthesize what we've explored. You are not a fixed entity. You are a dynamic system, capable of profound transformation through the mechanisms of neuroplasticity and behavioral change. Your beliefs are not passive observations. They are active predictions that shape your perception and experience. They can be deliberately constructed through sustained attention and evidence-based narrative. Your patterns are not character flaws. They are well-established neural pathways that can be interrupted through implementation intentions, environmental design, and identity-level shift. Your transformation follows the mathematics of compound interest. Small, consistent actions accumulate into exponential change over time. The plateau is not failure, it is foundation building. Your adversity is not merely obstacle. It is information, constraint that forces creativity, an opportunity for the development of resilience. Your daily rituals are the architecture that sustains change when motivation fades. Keystone habits create ripple effects. Rest is structural, not optional. And your legacy mindset, your consideration of impact beyond your own lifespan, provides the ultimate filter for importance and the motivation of mortality. The question now is not whether transformation is possible. We've established that it is, biologically, psychologically, practically. The question is whether you will engage the process. This is not a passive listening experience. This is an invitation to active participation. To take these principles and apply them. To move from understanding to implementation. The gap between knowing and doing is where most people live. They consume information about transformation without transforming. They understand the mechanisms without engaging them. Your task is to bridge that gap. To select one principle from this exploration, just one, and to implement it today. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Today. Because the compound interest of character begins with a single deposit. The architecture of self is built one choice at a time. The legacy you create starts with what you do in the next hour. As we conclude, I want to return to the question we began with: who are you becoming? You now have a more sophisticated understanding of what this question entails. It is not about wishful thinking. It is about biological reality. It is about the recognition that every moment is a vote, every day is a deposit, every choice is a contribution to the construction of self. You are not finished. You are not fixed. You are, right now, in the process of becoming. The only question is whether that process is conscious or unconscious, deliberate or default, aligned with your values or drifting with circumstance. The tools are available. The mechanisms are understood. The possibility is real. What remains is the choice. The daily choice. The choice to be the architect of your own becoming. Thank you for engaging with this material. Thank you for giving it your attention, your thought, your time. These are your most precious resources, and you have invested them here. May that investment compound. May it generate returns beyond what you can currently imagine. May you become, through consistent practice and deliberate design, the person you are capable of being. The work begins now. You have arrived at a threshold. The first movement of this exploration established the foundations, the biology of belief, the mechanics of interruption, the mathematics of growth, the alchemy of adversity, the architecture of ritual, and the horizon of legacy. What follows now is not repetition but descent. We are going deeper into territories that resist easy answers. We are going to examine the shadow side of transformation, the paradoxes of mastery, the loneliness of vision, the ethics of power, and ultimately, the integration of all that we have explored into a way of being that can sustain a lifetime. Consider this: every transformation story you have ever heard is edited. The published version. The highlight reel. The before and after with the messy middle removed. But you are not living a highlight reel. You are living the messy middle. You are living the hours that will never be documented, the doubts that have no audience, the regressions that feel like failure but are actually part of the spiral of growth. This next movement is for that lived reality. For the 3 in the morning questions. For the days when the compound interest seems invisible. For the moments when you suspect that everyone else has figured it out and you alone are struggling. We begin with the recognition that transformation is not linear. It is spiral. You will return to the same lessons, the same challenges, the same emotional territories, but from a different altitude. The first time you encountered fear, you were controlled by it. The second time, you negotiated with it. The third time, you recognized it as familiar weather. The fourth time, you used it as fuel. Each return feels like regression. It is not. It is integration at a deeper level. The spiral is the shape of all natural growth. The seed does not become the tree by leaving itself behind. It becomes the tree by becoming more fully what it always was. You are not leaving yourself behind. You are becoming more fully what you always were. This requires patience with paradox. You must hold opposing truths simultaneously. You must be urgent about your growth and patient with your timeline. You must be compassionate with your present limitations and ruthless about your future standards. You must be fully present in this moment and fully committed to a future that does not yet exist. You must be willing to stand alone and willing to be deeply connected. You must be humble enough to learn and arrogant enough to attempt what seems impossible. These are not contradictions to be resolved. They are tensions to be inhabited. The capacity to hold tension without collapsing into one pole or the other, this is the mark of maturity. Let us examine the shadow. Every strength casts a shadow. The same drive that allows you to accomplish extraordinary things can disconnect you from the people you love. The same sensitivity that allows you to create art can make you vulnerable to paralysis. The same independence that allows you to think originally can become isolation. The same discipline that builds capability can become rigidity. Transformation requires not just developing strengths but managing their shadows. It requires the difficult work of noticing when your greatest asset has become your greatest limitation. The leader who cannot delegate because their competence has become control. The artist who cannot finish because their perfectionism has become avoidance. The thinker who cannot act because their analysis has become paralysis. Shadow work is not negative thinking. It is clear seeing. It is the willingness to look at what you would prefer not to see. The resentment you carry beneath your generosity. The superiority you feel beneath your humility. The terror of insignificance that drives your ambition. These are not flaws to be eliminated. They are energies to be integrated. The resentment can become information about boundaries you need to set. The superiority can become the seed of genuine confidence once it is acknowledged and tempered. The terror can become the fuel for contribution once it is faced rather than denied. What you resist persists. What you integrate transforms. The integration of shadow requires a practice of radical honesty that most people avoid. Not honesty with others, though that matters, but honesty with yourself. The question is not what you present to the world. The question is what you know to be true when you are alone with your thoughts. Do you know your real motivations? Do you know what you actually want, beneath what you think you should want? Do you know what you are afraid of, beneath the fears you admit? This honesty is not comfortable. It is liberating. It is the foundation of all genuine change. You cannot transform what you will not acknowledge. We turn now to the territory of mastery. Mastery is not the same as success. Success is external validation. Mastery is internal alignment. Success can be achieved through strategy, timing, luck, manipulation. Mastery can only be achieved through sustained engagement with a craft, a discipline, a domain of knowledge. Success can be photographed. Mastery is invisible. It is the difference between the performer and the practitioner, between the influencer and the expert, between the person who has arrived and the person who is still becoming. The path of mastery is countercultural in an age of acceleration. It requires the willingness to be bad for longer than others find acceptable. It requires the willingness to practice without external reward. It requires the willingness to become boring to others, because mastery looks like repetition, and repetition looks like obsession, and obsession looks like imbalance to those who do not understand what you are building. The master is not distinguished by talent. The master is distinguished by tolerance for the plateau. By the capacity to continue when the external world has stopped noticing. By the love of the craft that transcends the need for recognition. There is a phase in every mastery journey that is rarely discussed. It is the phase of disillusionment. You have passed the beginner's excitement. You have acquired competence. You can do things that once seemed impossible. But you have also seen behind the curtain. You have seen how much you do not know. You have encountered the limits of your current ability. You have realized that the next level requires not more of the same but something qualitatively different, something you do not yet have and do not know how to get. This is the valley of mastery. Many turn back here. They settle for competence. They become big fish in small ponds. They protect their current position rather than risk the vulnerability of being a beginner again. But the path to mastery requires repeated passages through this valley. Each level of achievement requires a subsequent period of incompetence as you stretch into new territory. The willingness to be a beginner again and again. Creativity. This is the price of mastery. Not creativity as talent, as gift, as special endowment. Creativity as practice, as discipline, as the result of specific conditions that can be cultivated. The research on creativity is clear. Creative production is not primarily a function of intelligence or talent. It is a function of quantity of output. The most creative people in any field are not necessarily the most gifted. They are the most prolific. They generate more ideas, more attempts, more failures. Their successes emerge from a larger pool of experiments. They are willing to be wrong more often than others find comfortable. This has implications for your own creative practice. You are not waiting for inspiration. You are not waiting for the right idea. You are generating. You are practicing. You are building the muscle of production so that when the quality emerges, you have the capacity to capture it. The poet writes daily. The painter paints daily. The entrepreneur experiments daily. The researcher investigates daily. The form matters less than the consistency. The muse does not visit the idol. The muse visits those who have prepared the altar through practice. But creativity also requires constraint. Unlimited freedom is paralyzing. The blank page is terrifying because it is infinite possibility. The artist needs the frame. The musician needs the key. The writer needs the deadline. Constraint forces decisions. Decisions force engagement. Engagement produces work. Work produces skill. Skill produces the capacity to work with greater freedom within self-imposed constraints. This is the paradox: freedom emerges from discipline. Choice emerges from limitation. Creativity emerges from structure. We must address the question of leadership. Not leadership as position, as title, as authority over others. Leadership as influence. As the willingness to take responsibility for outcomes that are not entirely in your control. As the capacity to hold vision when others have lost sight of it. As the courage to act when the path is unclear. Everyone leads in some domain of their life. The parent leads the family. The expert leads the project. The friend leads the conversation toward truth. The citizen leads through example. Leadership is not reserved for the few. It is the responsibility of anyone who sees what others do not yet see. The essential challenge of leadership is the gap between vision and reality. The leader lives in this gap. They see what could be while working with what is. They hold the tension between the ideal and the actual without collapsing into cynicism about the ideal or denial about the actual. This is exhausting. It is why leaders burn out. It is why they become bitter or disconnected. The capacity to hold this tension over time, to continue seeing the gap without being consumed by it, this is the developmental task of leadership. It requires support. It requires recovery practices. It requires the willingness to be vulnerable about the burden of vision. There is a particular loneliness to leadership that is rarely acknowledged. The leader cannot share all their doubts. Not because they are inauthentic, but because their function includes holding stability for others. The leader cannot follow every impulse toward change. Not because they are rigid, but because their function includes maintaining continuity. The leader is often misunderstood. Their actions are interpreted through lenses they did not choose. Their mistakes are magnified. Their sacrifices are invisible. This is not complaint. It is description. It is the terrain. And it requires the leader to develop sources of nourishment that are independent of recognition. To find validation in the work itself, in the integrity of their process, in the quiet knowledge that they have done what was required. We turn to relationship. Not as separate from transformation but as central to it. You do not transform in isolation. You transform in the context of others, others who reflect you, challenge you, support you, limit you, expand you. The quality of your relationships is the single greatest determinant of the quality of your life. Not your achievements. Not your possessions. Your relationships. This is not sentiment. This is the finding of longitudinal research. The Harvard study of adult development, running for over 80 years, has demonstrated that warm relationships are the strongest predictor of health, happiness, and longevity. Stronger than wealth. Stronger than fame. Stronger than achievement. But relationships do not maintain themselves. They require the same architectural thinking that we have applied to individual transformation. They require attention to the compound interest of small interactions. The daily kindness. The remembered detail. The apology offered quickly. The appreciation expressed specifically. These are the deposits in the relationship account. And they compound. Over years, they create a foundation of trust that can withstand significant strain. Conversely, the small withdrawals, the ignored bid for connection, the criticism offered carelessly, the assumption made ungenerously, also compound. They erode the foundation until what seemed solid collapses suddenly. The most important relationship is with yourself. This is not selfishness. This is infrastructure. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot love others without loving yourself. Not narcissistic self-love, but genuine self-regard. The recognition of your own worth. The commitment to your own growth. The protection of your own boundaries. The forgiveness of your own failures. The celebration of your own progress. This relationship requires the same care as any other. It requires time alone. It requires honest self-assessment. It requires the willingness to be your own advocate when others are not available. We must speak of purpose. The word is overused, but the reality is essential. Purpose is not a job title. It is not a mission statement. It is the felt sense that your existence matters. That your actions contribute to something larger than your personal survival and comfort. Purpose is what allows suffering to be bearable. It is what allows sacrifice to feel meaningful. It is what allows the difficult days to be endured. Without purpose, transformation becomes self-improvement for its own sake, which is ultimately empty. With purpose, every challenge becomes meaningful. Every setback becomes information. Every effort becomes contribution. Purpose is not found. It is constructed. It is built through engagement with the world, through the discovery of what needs doing that you are capable of doing, through the gradual alignment of your capabilities with the world's needs. It is not a lightning bolt. It is a slow dawn. It is the accumulation of evidence that your existence serves something. This evidence comes from action, not contemplation. From service, not introspection. From the feedback of others that you have made a difference. We approach the territory of mortality again, but from a different angle. Not mortality as motivation, but mortality as perspective. The recognition that your time is limited changes not just what you do but how you experience what you do. The mundane becomes precious when seen against the backdrop of finitude. The ordinary day is extraordinary when understood as unrepeatable. This is not morbid. This is awakening. The near-death experience is legendary for producing transformation because it forces this perspective suddenly. But you do not need to nearly die. You only need to truly see that you will die. This perspective dissolves pettiness. It clarifies priorities. It reveals that most of what consumes your attention will not matter in the final accounting. The grudges. The status competitions. The anxiety about others' opinions. The pursuit of symbols rather than substance. These are revealed as the distractions they are. What remains is relationship, contribution, experience, growth. The love you gave. The work you did with integrity. The moments of genuine presence. The courage you showed in the face of fear. We must discuss the integration of body and mind. The Cartesian split, thinking of yourself as a mind that happens to have a body, is catastrophically wrong. You are a body. All of your thinking happens in a biological context. Your sleep determines your cognition. Your nutrition determines your emotion. Your movement determines your mood. Your posture determines your confidence. The transformation of self that ignores the body is incomplete. It is fragile. It will collapse under stress because it lacks the physiological foundation for resilience. The body keeps score. It stores what the mind forgets. The tension you carry. The breathing you restrict. The sleep you sacrifice. These are not neutral choices. They are deposits in a biological account that will be settled eventually. The settlement may come as illness, as burnout, as sudden collapse that seems mysterious but is actually the inevitable result of long-term imbalance. You cannot negotiate with biology. You can only align with it. This alignment is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that your greatest asset is your aliveness, and that this aliveness must be maintained. The practices are simple and difficult. Sleep enough. Move regularly. Eat food that nourishes rather than merely stimulates. Breathe deeply. Spend time in natural light. Touch and be touched. These are not luxuries for those with leisure. They are foundations for those with ambition. The person who sacrifices this for productivity is not being tough. They are being foolish. They are borrowing from their future at usurious rates. We turn to the question of meaning in an apparently indifferent universe. This is the existential territory. The recognition that there is no pre-written script. No inherent meaning. No cosmic guarantee that your efforts will be rewarded. This can be terrifying. It can produce nihilism, hedonism, despair. But it can also produce something else, the recognition that meaning is not discovered but created. That you are the author. That the universe's indifference is not cruelty but freedom. It does not care what you do, which means you can do anything. You can choose what matters. You can construct significance. You can live as if your actions matter, and in the living, they become mattering. This is the existentialist wager. Not theism. Not atheism. But responsibility. The recognition that you are absolutely free and absolutely responsible. That there is no one to blame and no one to credit but you. That the life you live is the life you have chosen, moment by moment, day by day, and that continuing to live it is a continuous act of choice. This is heavy. It is also liberating. It returns agency to where it belongs. It removes the possibility of victimhood as a permanent condition. It demands that you participate in the authorship of your existence. We must speak of the integration of knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is information. Wisdom is the capacity to use information well. Knowledge is accumulated. Wisdom is distilled. Knowledge is about having answers. Wisdom is about asking better questions. Knowledge is demonstrated in speech. Wisdom is demonstrated in action, in silence, in the timing of when to speak and when to listen. The transformation we seek is not merely the accumulation of knowledge about transformation. It is the embodiment of wisdom. The living of what has been understood. This requires a practice of reflection that is deeper than consumption. You can consume this content and remain unchanged. You can understand every concept and continue your previous patterns. The gap between understanding and embodiment is where most people live. The bridge across this gap is practice. Repetition. The willingness to act on what you know before you feel ready, before you feel motivated, before you have evidence that it will work. The body learns through doing. The nervous system learns through exposure. The character learns through choice. Knowledge becomes wisdom only through application. We approach the final territory, transcendence. Not transcendence as escape from the world, but transcendence as inclusion of the world within a larger perspective. The recognition that you are not merely your personality, your history, your achievements, your failures. You are consciousness itself, temporarily inhabiting a particular form, having a particular experience. This perspective does not invalidate your personal story. It contextualizes it. It allows you to hold your suffering lightly because you are larger than your suffering. It allows you to hold your success lightly because you are larger than your success. The practices that cultivate this perspective are ancient and cross-cultural. Meditation, contemplation, prayer, ritual, time in nature, creative flow, service to others. These are not escapist. They are integrative. They connect you to what is larger than your individual concerns. They produce the felt sense that you are part of something, life, consciousness, evolution, mystery, that transcends your personal narrative. This sense is not irrational. It is supported by the recognition that you are made of elements forged in stars, that your existence depends on ecological systems you did not create, that your consciousness is continuous with all consciousness, that your death is part of life itself. From this perspective, transformation is not merely personal improvement. It is participation in the evolution of consciousness. Your growth contributes to the growth of all. Your healing contributes to the healing of all. Your awakening contributes to the awakening of all. This is not metaphor. This is systems reality. We are connected. Your state affects others. Your development enables the development of those around you. The work you do on yourself is not selfish. It is service. We must finally address the question of sustainability. Transformation that burns out is not transformation. It is intensity followed by collapse. The goal is not peak performance. It is sustainable high performance. Not the sprint. The marathon. The ultramarathon that is a human life. This requires rhythms. Cycles of expansion and recovery. Seasons of intensity and seasons of consolidation. The wisdom to know when to push and when to rest. The humility to accept that you cannot be optimized at all times in all domains. Sustainability requires the integration of all that we have explored. The biological foundation. The psychological patterns. The social relationships. The existential perspective. The creative practice. The leadership responsibility. The shadow work. The mastery journey. These are not separate compartments. They are aspects of a whole life. They influence each other. Neglect one and the others suffer. Develop one and the others are supported. The work is integration. The work is wholeness. As we move toward conclusion, I want to speak directly to where you might be right now. Perhaps you are energized, seeing new possibilities, ready to act. Perhaps you are overwhelmed, recognizing how much you do not yet have integrated, feeling the gap between aspiration and reality. Perhaps you are skeptical, having heard similar messages before, wondering if this time will be different. Perhaps you are grieving, recognizing time lost, opportunities missed, patterns repeated. Perhaps you are hopeful, sensing that something has shifted, that a new chapter is possible. All of these responses are valid. All are part of the process. The energy will need to be channeled or it will dissipate. The overwhelm will need to be focused or it will paralyze. The skepticism will need to be tested through action or it will become cynicism. The grief will need to be felt and integrated or it will become bitterness. The hope will need to be grounded in practice or it will become fantasy. What I offer is not a promise that transformation is easy. It is not. What I offer is the recognition that transformation is possible. That the mechanisms are real. That the path has been walked by others. That you are not uniquely flawed or uniquely doomed. That the difficulties you face are the difficulties that everyone faces who attempts to live with intention and integrity. That the rewards, genuine self-respect, deep relationship, meaningful contribution, the felt sense of having lived rather than merely existed, are available. That they are worth the price. The price is attention. The price is consistency. The price is the willingness to be uncomfortable. The price is the courage to be seen, to fail, to try again.